Kelvin wakes up in a fantasy world after making a contract with a goddess of reincarnation by the name of Melfina. Kelvin died in his real world because of a mistake that the goddess made, and he meets Melfina, who reincarnates him. He negotiates with her to trade his memories for more skills, which leaves him with no memories of his past life. After waking up in this new world, he sees a console that gives him all the menu about his stats. The console tells him that it's Melfina, and it will be his servant throughout because Kelvin made that contract with her, a contract that no one else had asked her to do. She tells him how he first fell in love with her and how he promised he would still fall in love with her even without the memories of his first encounter with her. Melfina tells Kelvin that his ability is known as the Summoner, and he asks her if he can summon her. She tells him that it's possible, but not this time because he doesn't have enough MP. Kelvin promises that he'll surely summon her when he gets enough MP to do so. As they walk around the town that Melfina directed him to go to, she leads him to an adventurer's guild house to sign up as a guild member, so that he can start taking requests for him to earn money and grow his rank. Arriving at the guild, he meets one of the receptionists, and she gives him a paper to sign his details. She warns him about signing as the summoner because it would draw the attention of many. Summoners are very rare, and there's only one in each nation. Kelvin says he will register as a green mage because he doesn't want to attract the attention of people if he signs up as the summoner. He takes his first request to hunt down and take down 3 blue slimes. Melfina agrees with the decision, and they set out in the forest to look for the blue slimes. Arriving at the forest, he spots the 3 blue slimes. Melfina tells him that he can take down 2 and make one of the slimes his servant. He worries that if he uses magic, he might end up killing the slimes, so he decides to use the wooden part of the magic staff he bought at the market on his way to this forest. He rushes for an attack, but he misses as they all jump out. The 2 slimes run away while one of the slimes remains and starts attacking him. It jumps on him and pushes him down with force. Kelvin realizes that the slimes are also powerful. He uses another tactic to take it down, but he fails, and it beats him down. He calculates its moves and realizes it's very fast. Kelvin makes his strike after calculating the slime's speed. The slime dodges Kelvin's attack, but he swings another attack immediately before it could make its landing. He manages to weaken the slime to an extent that it can't fight back. Melfina tells him to stretch his hand toward the slime for it to consent. The slime fades and makes some twinkling substance as they get inside, and he makes it his servant. He says he can feel what the slime is feeling inside of him, and he realizes it is happy that he has made it his owner. Melfina tells him that the slime doesn't have a name and he should give it one. Kelvin names the slime Clotho. He later summons Clotho and is about to ask it to help him take down the other slimes. Melfina tells him that he is bad for trying to get the slime to kill its own kind. Kelvin tells Clotho that it can choose not to fight and kill its own kind if it doesn't want to. But Clotho seems excited to kill other slimes for its lord. Kelvin agrees then that they could go together and kill the other slimes. He says that he will use the magic that Melfina taught him. They jump in to attack the other slimes. Kelvin uses his magic stick and takes down one of the slimes. Clotho fights the other slime and kills it. Kelvin says it seems like Clotho has gotten stronger than before. Kelvin takes the remains of the slimes and heads back to the guild with them. They get paid for completing the task. Kelvin says they have found the money to afford an inn and food for tonight. On his way to the inn, he meets a man selling slaves. And as he looks closer, he sees an elf among the slaves. The customers there say elves are rare because they barely leave their village. And some of them complain that she's a half-elf and half-human. Kelvin takes a closer look at her and they make eye contact. He leaves the place and heads to the inn that one of the receptionists at the guild had recommended him to try out as a first rank of the guild. Kelvin arrives and the woman inside introduces herself as Claire. She tells him that the food is getting prepared and she walks him to his room as he waits for the food. Inside the room, he talks to Melfina after Claire had left. He asks if there are no bathrooms where he could take a shower. Melfina tells him that it's only in expensive rooms that they can have such features. While in these rooms, he can only use a towel to wipe his dirt or go to some river to bathe. Kelvin says he will work hard and make sure one day he lives in a very big house with bathrooms and pools. As they talk, he notices the food is ready and starts to head out to eat. Melfina says she can't wait to be summoned and manage to eat the human food. He tells her that she should leave that to him as he will take care of it. He goes to the table and eats all the food that Claire had made for him. The next morning, he starts to go on other quests with Clotho and taking out monsters. Kelvin is back to take another quest at the guild. Angie, the receptionist, tells him that he has been promoted to rank E. She tells him that she was really worried when he started taking higher-ranking jobs without forming a party. Melfina speaks in his mind, saying that it's not like he didn't want to form a party, but because he couldn't. He tells her that it's because he fears that others will know that he's a summoner, and things won't be safe for him. She asks him if he wasn't planning on standing out, but he remains silent. Every member in the guild is talking about them. They all talk to each other how Kelvin is getting promoted in such a small period of time, and he's taking higher-ranking quests when he's not high-ranked. Angie asks him if he was a court mage from some palace somewhere because he's too strong for a beginner. He tells her that he can't disclose that information. She apologizes to him, saying that she's not even allowed to ask such questions to guild adventurers, and she apologizes. She tells him to be careful as he's going for a rank D job next. He tells her that he will be careful. He makes a joke saying that if he encounters something dangerous that he can manage, he'll make a run for it because he's a fast runner. He tells her to give him a rank D job. Another guild adventurer tells him that if he's taking a rank D job, then why he can't just take the job to take down the Black Ghost Knight. Angie recognizes the adventurer to be Cashel, and she asks him if he's back. He agrees that he's back. Cashel boasts around about his last job and says that it was a rank C job. He points at Kelvin and tells him that he's happy for him for being promoted to rank E and gives him his hand for a handshake. Kelvin looks at him and asks him to introduce himself. He says his name is Cashel and he's a rank D adventurer. The other guild adventurers in the house start gossiping among themselves that Cashel is actually powerful as a rank C. Some of them say he likes to crush the new kids, and someone suggests that they should warn Kelvin. Cashel looks at them with a side-bombarded eye, and they all stop talking. Cashel asks Kelvin to join his party as they go and take down the Black Ghost Knight. Angie steps in, saying that even though the Black Ghost Knight's job is a rank D job, it is known that the Black Ghost Knight is the most powerful of them all, and Kelvin has just been promoted to rank E. Cashel says it's fine because they will help Kelvin. Kelvin thanks Cashel for the offer but says he won't join them. He asks Cashel that they should compete. Whoever takes down the Black Ghost Knight wins. Kelvin looks into Cashel's stats and sees that he's the same level as Clotho, and his title is a murderer. Still, he suggests that they should compete. Cashel agrees and says that he will go with his party. Cashel walks out and Kelvin talks to himself that he will set a trap for them because he knows that Cashel's plan is to kill him. He will make them believe that they have trapped him while he's the one making them walk into the trap. Cashel meets his team. They make plans to crush Kelvin at first sight during the job. They get so excited and they set out for the job. Arriving at the Wicked Spirit's castle where the Black Ghost Knight is, they realize that all the undead monsters have been defeated already. Kelvin comes out of hiding and starts talking to Cashel and his team. He tells them that he already knew their plans to kill him, so they should just fight at the spot, and whoever wins gets to face the Black Ghost Knight. Kelvin starts to provoke one of Cashel's men, the big one who seems to be so strong among them. He calls the man a wimp, which pisses the guy off, and he starts running towards Kelvin. Cashel warns him to stop and not let Kelvin provoke him, but the guy doesn't listen and walks straight into a muddy swamp trap. He starts to sink. Kelvin strikes them with a magic wind, and they block while Cashel dodges it. The other party member of Cashel runs away, saying that Kelvin is dangerous. Kelvin summons Clotho to take down the runaway member. Cashel starts to run towards Kelvin to take him down, but Kelvin strikes him down. Kelvin ties all three and says he will deliver them to the guild since they have a bounty on their heads. He opens the door in front of him to go and fight the Black Ghost Knight. Kelvin encounters the Black Ghost Knight and, seeing how powerful he is, tells him that he has changed his mind. He says he will make a contract with him instead of killing him. The Black Ghost Knight says no one has ever talked to him before, as everyone just opens the door and starts marching against him. They sit down and start conversing. The Black Ghost Knight explains to Kelvin that the palace he is in used to be a place that he protected as a captain. And one day, an elf came to his king and demanded that the king should attack and wipe out the Deramis. But the king denied, and the elf said that there would be consequences for it. A few days later, the country suffered a strange plague and everyone died. He only became a monster because he had no promise. Kelvin tells him to become his servant as he will be addressed as the king. The Black Ghost Knight requests for a fight to see how good Kelvin is. Kelvin agrees. and they start fighting. Kelvin learns that the Black Ghost Knight's name is Gerard. Gerard and Kelvin start fighting. Kelvin realizes that Gerard is so powerful, so Clotho joins the fight. He uses different magics, but Gerard continues to block all and breaks every barrier that Kelvin sets. Kelvin and Clotho level up their attacks and they manage to take down Gerard and make a contract with him. He takes part of Gerard's armor and delivers it to the guild. Everyone at the guild congratulates him for defeating the Black Ghost Knight, including Cashel, along with his party. As he goes to his room, he meets a man dressing like a general and tells him that it's certainly a beautiful day today. The man turns out to be the guild master. Kelvin agrees that the day is indeed beautiful and adds that he's about to take a job. The guildmaster introduces himself as Leo. He expresses how the other young guild adventurers admire Kelvin's success in a very short period of time. Leo uses his eye appraisal to see Kelvin's ability. Kelvin is caught off guard after he realizes that Leo's eye appraisal is ranked A, which means it's above his level. He worries that he never thought about it, and probably he's now exposed to Leo. Leo invites Kelvin in and they sit down to talk. Kelvin admits to himself that he was being careless because he didn't think there would be someone with such a high rank in his eye appraisal. Leo tells Kelvin that he knows that he's a summoner after he explained to him that he knows that Kelvin didn't defeat the Black Ghost Knight on his own, but with the help of his servants. Kelvin panics, but Gerard speaks to him inside, telling him to get hold of himself and tell the secret because he cannot hide it forever. And he sure needs to make friends whom he can share the secret with. Kelvin admits that he is a summoner. Leo tells him that he's not the first summoner he had encountered. He tells him that he also met the others from his world as well, and they are called the heroes of the Holy Empire of Deramis. Kelvin is surprised about hearing of the other heroes from another world. Melfina tells him that she has remembered them, and she's the one that reincarnated them. And if he's curious about it, she will tell him later. Leo says the priestess Deramis heard the prophecy from God, and she summoned the heroes. The motive for summoning the heroes was because she said the revival of the Demon King is upon them. Kelvin connects the dots and speaks out that the reason he has been invited in is because he wants him to fight for him and the country. Leo admits and says he will use his power to increase Kelvin's adventurer rank. He will grant him freedom, and he will allow him to take any jobs. Kelvin says it seems to be too much in his favor. At the end of the conversation, Kelvin agrees to the deal, and they shake hands. Kelvin meets Claire at the end and she hugs him and congratulates him for getting promoted to rank B. He tells her to give him some lunch. He takes it up to his room to eat. As he eats, Melfina starts to explain about the heroes of the Holy Empire of Deramis. She tells him that the priestess performed the summoning ritual, and Melfina chose some fine and young individuals and reincarnated them. She tells him that she's got sick of demon kings and she rather wishes he didn't have to get involved. Kelvin finishes up his food and tries to rest, but he wakes up and tells Clotho to give him the money he gave to her. Clotho gives him the money. Gerard asks if he's going out for shopping. Kelvin says he's going to buy the slave he saw the other day. Arriving at the place he saw the slaves being sold, he finds a man crying as his head is on fire. The slave dealer puts out the fire, and the man says he won't buy the slave because she's cursed. Kelvin looks at her and asks Melfina what he needs to break the elf's curse. She tells him that since it looks like a Fire Dragon King's curse, he will need a Sacred Bless spell from a White Magic Rank A user. Kelvin walks away. A while later, the slave seller complains to the elf that she cannot get sold because of her curse, as everyone who touches her catches on fire. As he talks, Kelvin shows up again and gives money to the seller, saying that he'll take the elf. The seller opens her cage and tells her to follow Kelvin. She follows Kelvin as he heads to the inn. Along the way, she starts to thank him for purchasing her. He turns to her and tries to touch her, but she leans back and tells him that she doesn't want anyone getting hurt because of her curse. Kelvin tells her to trust him, and he leans his hand towards her head and activates the spell. It glows on her and the curse breaks immediately. He tells her that she's finally free, and he takes off the cuffs on her hand. She falls on her knees thanking him. She tells him that her name is Ethel. Kelvin takes her to the inn and introduces her to Claire. Claire makes a frowning face for a minute. He tells her that she should find some clothes for Ethel after dinner. Claire stares at them for a while and says she won't allow a girl to eat dressed like that. She takes Ethel to her chambers while Kelvin waits for food. Kelvin waits and starts losing it because he's so hungry. Claire then shows up and tells Ethel to come out. As she comes out, Kelvin is so surprised and runs out of words. Ethel asks him how she looks, but he fails to say a single word. Ethel starts to lose her confidence, but then she starts blushing after Kelvin tells her that she's very beautiful. They sit and eat the food prepared by Claire. Later in the evening, Kelvin complains that he can't sleep because he's made to sleep on the same bed with Ethel since Claire couldn't find any empty rooms. Angie compliments Kelvin about the jobs he has managed to successfully execute. She says he has completed 9 works in a row, and if he takes one more, then he will surely take the exam. Kelvin and Angie also compliment Ethel for how strong she has become and how she managed to defeat the examiner in seconds. Kelvin tells her that she will soon be a rank B because she's now rank C. Angie asks Ethel if she can go with her to a certain shop that has just opened where they make sweets. Ethel says she will surely go. Ethel asks Kelvin to come along. As Kelvin is thinking about it, Angie asks him if he will deny a girl the way that Ethel has asked. He then agrees to tag along. Ethel and Angie are so happy. The other receptionist tells Angie to get back to work. The next day, Kelvin makes it to the spot they agreed to meet. He waits for the girl and Angie shows up first. Kelvin tells her that she looks good in the new outfit she's wearing. As they talk, Angie tells Kelvin to be more relaxed around her. Kelvin agrees. A few minutes later, Ethel shows up in an epic outfit, and Kelvin's jaw drops, leaving him speechless. Ethel thinks to herself that maybe she didn't nail the outfit. Angie pinches Kelvin to say something, and he tells her that she looks great. Ethel blushes. Angie starts pinching Ethel, telling her how fast she's growing and how she's becoming fine and plump. They later head to have the sweets. As they sit to eat the sweets, Ethel tries to feed Kelvin, and he tells her not to do it in public. Angie asks him loudly if he gets fed by Ethel at their home. He tries to back himself up, but Angie tells him that she will also feed him. The people around them start speculating that Ethel and Angie are fighting over Kelvin. He tells them they should take the food and eat at home. In a blink of an eye, some men kick their table, and all their food scatters around. Kelvin looks at them and asks who they are. The men tell them that they are guards, and the man at their center introduces himself as the 3rd Prince of Tryson Tabra. The guards force Kelvin to bow down, and they call him a worm. Kelvin is pissed, and he uses his magic and attacks the guards, knocking them down. The prince tries to scare him with his title, but Kelvin uses his magic and traps him to an extent that he can't move. Kelvin asks him his motive of coming to Parth. The prince says that he heard of a hero that is in Parth, and he came to make the hero his servant so that he can make him famous and gain respect in the presence of all the town of Tryson. Kelvin realizes that the hero the prince is talking about is him. He knocks him down and tells Angie and Ethel that they should head back home. On the side, Melfina has left Kelvin's network and headed to Deramus. She talks to the priestess by the name of Colette. Colette asks Melfina to give her a new oracle. Melfina sees the heroes through an orb and seeing their stats. She tells Colette that the heroes have grown. She advises her to send the heroes to the western continent because she has sensed the presence of evil there. She adds that she must keep the heroes out of Parth. Colette agrees, Melfina vanishes, and the heroes walk in, asking Colette if something wrong happened. She tells them that the goddess has given her a new oracle. Back in Parth, Kelvin and Ethel are still sleeping on the same bed. Kelvin apologizes to her, saying that he will surely find a room for her. She asks him if maybe she's not attractive enough to him. Kelvin tells her that she can only do that with someone she loves. She tells him she loves him because he showed her anything to do with love. He holds her by the shoulder and tells her that she's attractive, and then they go back to sleep. The next morning, as Kelvin and his party are discussing some things, Claire knocks on the door and tells them that their presence is requested at the guild. Kelvin heads to the guild and meets with Leo. Leo tells him that there's a demon that some adventurers have discovered, but they can't do anything about it. Kelvin accepts the job and goes with his party. Kelvin meets with a guild adventurer who has spotted the place along with his party. Kelvin tells to stay outside while he goes inside with his party. Entering the demon's den, Kelvin detects that there seems to be 2 demons in the house, one weakened and the other very strong. Entering the main door, they see a female demon tied in chains. As they draw near, they are welcomed by a demon who introduces himself as Archdemon Victor. Kelvin learns that they have walked into a trap as Victor wants to kill a human so that he can take the human's characteristics and use them to free the female demon and eat her so that he can become the Demon King. They also learn that the female demon is the daughter of the Demon King Gustav. Kelvin is excited to face a demon so strong, and he smiles. Victor wonders why Kelvin is excited. Melfina explains to Ethel that Kelvin gets excited when he encounters a strong opponent. Victor asks Kelvin what the look on his face is about. Kelvin replies that he has never met an enemy as strong as him and is so excited that he can't control himself. Victor tells him it's fascinating and extends his arm to a pile of skeletons, saying he'll show him something exciting using his black magic. Victor revives the Hades army, snapping his fingers, and they lunge at them. Kelvin realizes they're as strong as level B monsters. deciding to take them out before they get close. He swings his weapon while enchanting a magical spell. Wind shots, taking down some of the revived army. Gerald strikes with his sword, saying they might break a bone or two with the Hades army, and takes down more monsters. When more Hades armies revive, Gerald tells Kelvin to take out the one he misses. Running forward to continue fighting, Victor watches on the sidelines, admiring their power and how they move in perfect harmony. He compliments Kelvin's skills, noting he fights like a warrior with years of experience despite being young. After defeating the army, Kelvin asks Victor if he has something else to show him. Victor replies that he's a battle junkie searching for a high, judging by Kelvin's constant grin. Kelvin explains it's a sort of a sickness. He's having so much fun he can't control himself. Victor shouts, "Let me wipe that smile off your face," and punches the ground. Gerald tells Kelvin that Victor is creating a smoke bomb, but Kelvin assures him he's tracking him. Victor sneaks attacks on them, attacking Gerald from behind. Gerald senses it and blocks the attack. Victor tries to attack Kelvin, who jumps off the ground. Gerald fights with Victor, but Victor blocks Gerald's attack and uses his black magic to send him flying. Kelvin isn't worried about Gerald, knowing his armor is strong with 50% slash damage resistance. They overpower Victor when he attacks Kelvin with his stretchy arm. Kelvin calls for Clotho, a slime that absorbs some of Victor's magic. Working together, Ethel burns Victor's arm while Gerald cuts off his other hand. Victor tells them it has only begun as he screams, "Jen's scrimmage." He starts evolving into a huge monster. Ethel calls him Master Kelvin, telling them not to wait for him to finish casting. Kelvin casts a craft detonation spell, hitting the ground with fire underneath. Ethel uses his bow and arrow while Gerald strikes with his sword, but the attacks do nothing as Victor has already finished evolving. Kelvin turns to Gerald, telling him to turn his loyalty up. Gerald questions if he's sure, and Kelvin replies he'll need it to fight the monster. Gerald blocks Victor's attack and starts fighting with the monster. Melfina encourages him not to hold back. When Gerald falls, Ethel shoots a burning arrow at the monster until he gets back up. They all gang up on Victor together, throwing their attacks at him and defeat him. The building starts collapsing. Victor catches a rock about to fall on the Demon King's daughter, then falls back to the ground, telling them they have won. Kelvin asks Victor why he lied about planning to eat the Demon King's daughter. He replies that Kelvin wouldn't have fought as hard if he knew. Victor explains he was tasked with protecting her and keeping her hidden from Gustav's enemies. When the heroes attacked, Victor wanted to fight but was ordered to sit out and continue watching over her. Gustav placed a seal on her that only humans could break. When Gustav died, the spell activated, sending her to a faraway land under Victor's protection. Victor tells Kelvin to take her with them, show her the world, and let her to be a part of their party. Victor dies and Kelvin touches the green balls, breaking the seal. She wakes up, crying for Victor and her father, Gustav. Kelvin carries her out of the dungeon. Walking out, they meet Ud, who asks if it's done. Kelvin replies, as he has evidence, telling Ud to have them praised at the guild. Noticing he's carrying someone, Ud asks who she is, and Kelvin replies that the demon was possessing her when it was sealed. He tells Melfina that her headband prevents people from seeing her demon horns and wings. On their way back, Gerald evolves. Upon arriving in the city, Sarah, the Demon King's daughter, is excited upon seeing all the people around her. Kelvin tells Ethel to take her back to the inn while he reports to the guild. Leo promotes Kelvin to rank A, telling him that the demon he fought was a rank A, and they used it as a test for the promotion. He walks back to the inn. Upon opening the door and announcing his arrival, he's surprised to see so many people in the inn, congratulating him on his promotion, and they celebrate. Sarah is outside the inn, looking at the moon, as she remembers Gerald's promise to teach her how to swim one day at the sea. Kelvin promises to do that and see mountains and continents. Kelvin's blacksmithing and Ethel's sewing skills have reached rank S, excited to show them what they made. Kelvin crafts an armor for Sarah from Victor's armor, just as she wanted. Sarah names it the Queen's Terror, expressing that it makes her feel like she's fighting alongside Victor. Kelvin also forges a sword for Gerald, who comments that it looks the same. When Sarah asks to see Kelvin's weapon, he replies that they'll see it during battle. In a carriage heading to Tauraj, Sarah sees the river and gets excited, thinking she has seen the beach and wants to go swimming. Kelvin tells her he will teach her when they get to Tauraj. Gerald then informs Kelvin that the princess has gone missing again. Kelvin remembers he can't summon Melfina because her class is God. He asks her if there's something she can do, and she suggests possessing one of her avatars while she's on vacation. If it works, he might be able to summon her. Sarah asks Kelvin if he has noticed people watching them, and he replies that he has. Moments later, the people stop and the carriage driver asks who they are. A girl claims they're a band of thieves called the Black Wind. Kelvin checks their status and tells Sarah to take care of them. The thieves underestimate Sarah, and Insu tries to attack her. She punches him, sends him flying, kicks 2 others, and pushes another with a huge hammer. After beating them up, she ties them up. The girl warns them not to think they've won just because they defeated them, teasing that they should wait until they meet her boss, who is level 70. Kelvin asks her to tell them more about their boss. At the water country of Toraj, they go straight to Mist's office, Toraj's guildmaster. She thanks him for capturing the thieves. Kelvin asks about the thieves, the Black Wind. She explains that she passed the information he got from them to the other guilds and that the party that took them down was the one running it. Kelvin clarifies that Kristoff stopped the Black Wind bandits and took over. Mist explains to him that they are secretly kidnapping people and participating in the slave trade. Ethel and Sarah express their urge to go and take them down. However, Kelvin replies that it won't be easy. Mist agrees with Kelvin, stating that Kristoff is still regarded as the nation's hero, and they need to handle it right, or it can backfire on them. Suddenly, Kelvin senses someone strong walking through the gates of Toraj. He telepathically asks Sarah if she can sense it as well. She replies that she can sense someone powerful, about level 50. Kelvin tells Mist that he will have the heroes party do the work for them. The heroes go to Mist's office, and she offers them a job as part of Kelvin's plan. Kelvin's party has already arrived at the thieves' base and finds Hope assaulting the slaves. He explains that there's nothing more exciting in the world than hearing a girl scream. Gerald tells Kelvin that he doesn't like them. Hope realizes they are the ones that took down Kana, so he secretly starts reaching for his weapon. Gerald suddenly attacks him, and the little girl that was being assaulted thanks them. Meanwhile, Kristoff and Priscilla are arguing about Karna, who went and got caught during an important mission. Priscilla turns to Addo, who is quietly sitting in the corner, telling him to explain to Kristoff how their lives are at risk. Addo replies that he only cares about getting to battle someone strong. Kristoff tells Priscilla to calm down, explaining that he has sent Hope to investigate, so they will soon know what's going on. The door to the office suddenly opens, revealing Hope falling to the ground. Kelvin and his party enter the room with a surprise attack. Sarah fights with Priscilla, Addo battles Gerald, and Kristoff faces off against Kelvin. Kristoff realizes they must be the ones who took down Karna. The heroes arrive and find the captured people being protected by a huge slime. One of the slaves urges the heroes to help the adventurers who saved them. The heroes immediately make their way to Kristoff's office and find him and his friends lying on the ground groaning in pain. They think they've arrived late and that Kristoff's group are the adventurers. On the other side of the room, they see Kelvin's group still sitting in chairs staring at them. Toya asks Kelvin's group how they can do this to the heroes and inquires whether they are the Black Wind bandits. Drawing out his sword, Kelvin and his friends remain seated, staring at him. When Toya, the leader of the heroes, asks if they are the Black Wind bandits, Kelvin smirks. He starts explaining that these guys are pathetic, mentioning that he gave them just the slightest punishment, yet they were screaming and begging for their lives. Kelvin notes that for A-rank adventurers, they sure scream like little girls. He emphasizes that being weak doesn't mean one is bad, but he certainly doesn't want to be like them. He looks at the heroes, asking if they agree with what he just said. Toya draws out his sword, introducing himself as Toya Kanzaki, hero of Deramis. A girl steps forward to Toya's side, introducing herself as his companion, Setsuna Shiga, followed by their partners Nana Menzelka and Miyabi Koromiya. Toya explains that their job is to protect the people from thugs like them and deliver justice. He then screams, declaring they will defeat the Black Wind bandits in the name of justice. Kelvin laughs when Toya asks what's funny. He gets out of the chair, walking towards Toya, saying he's going to have to get a little stronger first. Toya gets angry, and his friends make him realize that Kelvin is trying to provoke him. Kelvin suggests playing a game, explaining that in a battle between him and Toya and his friends, the loser will grant the winner any wish. Toya tells him he can't fight so cowardly, he will take him alone. Setsuna calls out Toya's name, and he shakes his head, telling him that Kelvin is hiding something, so they should fight him together, not alone. Koromiya adds that she cannot see the rank of his magic, but he's way stronger than her. Upon hearing this, Toya screams, telling Kelvin that he has accepted the challenge. They go to a spacious room where Gerald drops the couch on the floor for the girls to sit on as they watch. Sarah thanks Gerald for the couch, and Kelvin tells his friends he still can't believe it's going this way. Ethel explains that if he uses his wish to get the heroes to testify about the slavers, Kristoff won't be able to have Tryson protect them. Kelvin replies that they are lucky the kid is thick. Gerald speaks, telling Kelvin that he went through the trouble of taking the Black Wind's place just so he could fight the heroes. Gerald confirms that Kelvin really is a battle junkie. When Sarah asks why he's the only one who gets to fight, he tells Ethel to bring her a basket of food, which indeed brightens Sarah's mood. Ethel then asks if it's true that all the heroes have lower levels than him. Kelvin uses his appraisal eye to check their levels, while Gerald explains that they all have some strange unique skills. His friends tell Kelvin that even though he's stronger than them, it's still dangerous to fight them alone. Kelvin replies that part of the battle is to test solutions to one of his weak points, which is fighting against groups. That's why he has a new item, the Skill Eater. Meanwhile, on the other side, Toya and his fellow heroes are staring at Kelvin, claiming he is evil and the boss of a gang that kidnaps people, steals, and tortures people. Toya calls out for his Light Fairy to lend them powers, while Setsuna calls to the Wind Fairy. Nana calls out for the Water Fairy, and Miyabi calls out for her Little Dark Fairy. Toya runs towards Kelvin to attack. Kelvin looks at him, thinking he's intelligent for wanting to get close, assuming he's a caster. Then he swings his staff, shouting Radiance Lancer, attacking Toya. The heroes attack him all at once. Kelvin is taken by surprise when he sees a dragon coming out of Nana's bag, breathing fire at him. With his speed, he stops behind Nana and uses his new item to copy Miyabi's skill. Toya lunges at him with his sword, screaming for him to get away from Miyabi. As Kelvin fights with Toya, Nana runs on Miyabi's side, using her power of light to heal Miyabi. However, Miyabi still feels weak. Nana asks if she's okay, and Miyabi replies that she feels dirty. Toya demands Kelvin to explain what he did to Miyabi. Kelvin smirks, telling him not to worry because he did nothing to her. A furious Toya orders Nana to keep healing Miyabi and Setsuna to keep them safe while he fights with Kelvin. They continue fighting as Toya uses his huge powerful sword, causing Kelvin to drop his, making him realize that it's going to take more training to keep up with Toya's sword skills. As Toya swings his sword again, Kelvin punches the sword with his new weapon, making Toya move a little. He throws another punch, and again catching Setsuna's attention. Setsuna notices that Toya has rank-S swordsmanship skill, but Kelvin is fighting him using his fists. Gerald asks Sarah if that's what she lent him, and she replies saying it's her martial arts special skill. Upon seeing Toya continuously being punched, Setsuna lunges forward, telling Toya he cannot take him alone. Kelvin jumps out of the way and casts a spell, creating a wall between them. Setsuna effortlessly breaks the wall using a skill called the Zetsatsu Can, a skill that can cut through anything regardless of the rank. He appears on the other side, throwing a light ball at them, causing an explosion, and Toya's arm starts bleeding. Nana and Miyabi rush to their friends, where Nana notices Toya's arm and tries to use light to heal him, but he insists he's alright. Toya then starts telling his friends that it's his duty to protect the world from thugs like Kelvin, so he must be able to take down Kelvin alone. Setsuna slaps him and tells him to think for himself. She starts reminding them of the day they were summoned into this new world, saying she was scared but managed to get through because the four of them are always together. Nana agrees with Setsuna as she explains that Toya is always trying to do everything by himself. Miyabi then explains that if they don't work together as they practice, they can't always use their full powers. Setsuna explains that everyone thinks he's strong, righteous, and amazing, but that's not enough. He can't take down the Demon King alone, so they need to work together. Toya eventually listens to his friends, and Toya hits his head and apologizes to his fellow heroes, saying he's sorry, he wasn't thinking straight. Then they turn to Kelvin, with Toya screaming that the four of them are heroes together. The heroes sneakily attack him with a fairy blind, making him unable to see. Then Nana uses his frostbite skills, and Miyabi uses her skill Felony Crush as well, making him unable to move as the ground is frozen, and he's feeling some kind of air pressure as Setsuna and Toya run to him, screaming he's done. However, he surprises them by using Cleft Detonation, causing an explosion that sends the two flying backwards. The two heroes start to wonder whether he did not destroy himself with his self-destruction cast. They are taken by surprise when they hear him healing his blindness and they see him. Kelvin smirks as he claps his hands, telling them that it was great teamwork and they scared him for a second. Toya is in shock as he realizes that he's undamaged. One of the heroes explains that he exploded the ground, breaking it to cancel the frost. Kelvin uses his appraising eye to guide his companions in coordinated combat. Toya, angered by Kelvin's perceived arrogance, reveals the true form of his sword, determined to defeat him. Despite the intense battle, Kelvin's fellow hero offers assistance. Nana traps him with ice, and Miyabi summons her Grave Death Ogre, attacking Kelvin. Kelvin summons his Adamant Guardians to block the onslaught, ordering them to delay the attackers for just 30 seconds. Miyabi, in disbelief, realizes Kelvin is casting a new spell. They attempt to interrupt him, but he completes the incantation, destroying the ice with his new spell. Nana questions how he knew to remove the ice all at once, and Kelvin explains that his appraising eye allows him to analyze everything. They lunge at him again, but Kelvin easily overpowers Setsuna and Miyabi, dismissing them as weak. He then focuses on Nana and her dragon, prompting Toya to attack fiercely in defense of his friends. Kelvin blocks Toya's strikes and delivers a powerful punch, sending him unconscious to the ground. Toya later wakes up, learning that Kelvin is an adventurer. He apologizes, acknowledging Kelvin's victory and readiness for any trial. Kelvin, with a hint of mischief, instructs Toya to start stripping, leaving everyone in shock. The slaves are returned to their respective homes, and Kelvin begins training the heroes using an octogiant. After numerous struggles, they manage to defeat the monster. Ethel calls them for lunch, and they all sit on the floor, chatting while eating. Sarah starts giving advice on fighting, but the heroes claim they can't hear her. Kelvin suggests she goes fishing. He then questions the heroes about their struggle with a low-class monster, emphasizing the challenge they'd face against an S-class. Toya responds that they would run, and suddenly a scream from behind startles everyone. Sarah runs, screaming about finding something, and a massive S-class monster appears, furious at being disturbed. Kelvin, observing the situation, asks the heroes once more what they will do. Toya replies that they will run, train, and prepare thoroughly to come back, defeat the monster, and emerge victorious. Impressed by Toya's answer, Kelvin declares that he's passed. After defeating the monster, the heroes depart from the port, and Kelvin gives them parting gifts, 4 pendants. He watches them leave and then asks Gerald if he believes they can win a war against the people who destroyed his home. Gerald is surprised. Kelvin remembers and confidently replies that they'll win because now they have allies. Sarah interrupts, informing Kelvin of a messenger from Mist's office. Kelvin is happy they have finally come for them. His friends are puzzled until he reminds them that the reason they came to Toraj is for rice. They arrive at the castle where the King Tsubaki expresses gratitude for stopping the Black Wind Bandit and defeating the monsters. Tsubaki offers them anything they desire. Kelvin mentions the exclusive Toraj rice, and Tsubaki, testing his greed, laughs and appreciates his honesty. She claps her hands, revealing a feast with white rice. They enjoy the meal, and Tsubaki is fascinated by Ethel's cooking, inviting them to stay and work in Toraj. Tsubaki proposes to Kelvin be her caretaker, but he declines. She gracefully accepts the rejection, promising to send them back to Parth in a special way. They reach the teleportation gate with permission from both sides, bid their goodbyes, and return to Parth. Upon returning to Parth, Kelvin purchases a new, spacious house. His friends are delighted and each choose a room. The doorbell rings, revealing Ellie and Luca, the slaves they rescued in Toraj. Kelvin explains that he's hiring them as servants. They applied after he put up an ad. After a well-deserved bath, Kelvin lies on the bed, and then he senses Melfina, who informs him she's ready to be summoned and catch his heart. He summons Melfina and is amazed by her beauty, remarking that she's truly his type. Melfina compliments Ethel's cooking and says it's really as good as people say it is. She tells Kelvin that she didn't think he'd buy a mansion like the one he bought. Gerald asks Kelvin who she is. Melfina introduces herself to everyone, saying her name is Melfina. Gerald says that he was sure that his king, Kelvin, had brought another new mistress home. Melfina says she's not a mistress, but rather Kelvin's wife. Kelvin nearly chokes on the drink he was having, and Ethel wipes his mouth as Kelvin rejects that it's not like that. Kelvin asks Mel if she's a famous goddess in Deramis, and she agrees. She suggests that they can address her as Mel. Ethel tells her that she will tell Ellie and Luca as well. Mel tells Kelvin that since he summoned her, she will give him a reward. She draws a flower using her finger, and the flower goes directly into Kelvin's body. She tells him to receive the grace of Melfina, goddess of reincarnation. Kelvin asks if the grace is like Ethel's fire dragon grace or the hero's fairy's grace. She tells him that he has received the goddess of reincarnation's grace, and it has 2 effects. One is that once a month it will completely prevent damage from a single wound that would otherwise be fatal, and is perfect protection from unfortunate accidents and unexpected attacks. Kelvin says that's super powerful. Sarah agrees that it is great, and that means she won't have to hold back during their next training session in sparring. Mel adds that the other thing it does, which is the most important one, is the ability to summon heroes. Moments later, Mel and Sarah are sparring while Gerald and Luca are watching. Kelvin is outside thinking about the Deramis heroes and whether they made it to the western continent. He seems to be digesting the words that are Mel said concerning the grace of summoning heroes. On the other side, the sparring between Melfina and Sarah intensifies, and Sarah summons her Jinn scrimmage right arm only while Melfina summons her divine dress, and they proceed with the spar. Sarah blocks the crystal arrows that Sarah is sending at her, backfiring at Melfina. They cause a scratch on her cheek, and Sarah smiles, saying that she's got her, only to realize her Jinn scrimmage is damaged, and they all get weak. Later on, they start complimenting each other's power while Gerald notices that these two have fought before. They tell him that they did once spar when they were deciding on who should sleep next to Kelvin. Sarah and Melfina are bathing. Melfina says she feels like her stress is getting washed away. Ethel opens the door to the bathroom and asks them if they still feel hurt on any place of their body. They say they are fine, and Sarah adds that Kelvin patched her up well. Mel says he seemed a bit off though. Sarah tells her that it's not surprising considering what she told him. Mel reaches out to Kelvin, who's thinking hard about the hero summoning thing. She says hi and puts a bar of chocolate in his mouth. As he eats, he says she shouldn't just put things in his mouth. She asks him to ask if there's something he'd like to ask her. He realizes that it's so obvious that she knew he had questions. He asks her why she needs heroes. She tells him that before she tells him about the heroes, she better start telling him about the Demon King. She tells him that the appearance of the Demon King happens in cycles and cannot be prevented. She doesn't even know what form of the next demon will take, but all Demon Kings have possessed a special skill. But P.S. this skill has two effects. The first is that it multiplies the evil within them and warps their personality with time. The second effect is that it nullifies the damage, which he can then simply call a permanent god mode. Kelvin is surprised to hear that. Kelvin asks how one can defeat them then. She tells him that's where the heroes come in because their power is fundamentally different than any other in this world. Kelvin understands that his powers can work on the Demon King too. He asks if it is really necessary to summon someone from another world out of their will and then force them to be heroes here. Mel explains that summoning people come in different types. One summoning the living and another summoning a dead one by summoning their soul to reincarnate in this world as they choose their appearance and everything that would fit them in this world. Kelvin tells Melfina that they will summon a dead soul to reincarnate in this world, even though it is random because he cannot choose someone directly. Working around their magic that evening, with the help of Sarah, Mel, and Gerald, they summon a soul that shows up in front of Kelvin. He sees that it's a little girl and she introduces herself as Ryosa Kelly. She thanks Kelvin for reincarnating her, and later on, both Kelvin and her collapse because they got exhausted from the process. Rio wakes up in the evening, goes outside, and throws herself on the grass, enjoying her new body and everything. In her old life, she spent all her time in the hospital and never experienced the joy of being outside, seeing the world like everyone else. Kelvin joins her and sees how happy she is. He tells her that she's lucky she has all her memories while he used his memories to upgrade his skills. She thanks him again for reincarnating her, giving her a second chance at life, and expresses her willingness to stay and join his party after he asks her to choose whatever she wants to do, as he doesn't want to force her into anything. He tells her that he will start telling everyone that she's his half-sister who came from a different land. She agrees to be called his sister because she grew up alone and it feels good to have a big brother. He asks her to change her name as it reminds him of someone who's an enemy to him. She tells him that she's changing it to Rayon, even though he protests, saying that there isn't much change. She agrees to the name. Kelvin is in bed and he realizes that Sarah is beside him. He remembers that the ladies were discussing who gets to sleep next to him. A hand reaches out to him and he realizes that Mel is on the side of him. Moving up his blanket, he sees Rion inside the blanket as well, sleeping, and wonders if all little sisters sneak into their big brother's bed. He talks to himself that she looks happy and it seems like it didn't take her long to get along and fit in. The next morning, Kelvin and the rest of the household are in the dark purple forest. Ellie asks Kelvin why she's with them along with Luca when they are just maids. He tells her that even though they are just maids, he wants them to level up their skills so that one day they can defend themselves if someone or something attacks them. After asking how they will level up when they don't fight, he tells them that while the ones who fight slay monsters, every member of the party levels up, which means their skills will increase as well. Sarah, Gerald, and Clotho are on the side of the forest. Sarah suggests that they kill all the demons within a limited time. Clotho and Gerald agree to have that fun, and they start fighting and wiping out the monsters. Ethel uses her farsight skill and says she has seen a wolf monster coming towards them. As the others panic, Kelvin asks Rayon if she likes dogs, and she agrees. The wolf monster shows up and Mel stands in front of Ellie and Luca. Kelvin tells everyone to remain calm, and he leans towards the wolf. The wolf jumps, trying to get close to him, but he uses his air pressure magical skill to trap the wolf. He uses his other magic and turns the wolf into a dog. Rian and Luca hug the dog and say it's so fluffy. With the use of Farsight, Ethel reports that Erd's party is coming near them hunting for monsters. Erd asks Kelvin what he's doing with his party in a dangerous forest like this. He tells them that they are just having a little picnic. Erd's fellows are envious of seeing Kelvin with more women and girls in his party. He tells them that some are maids, like Ellie and Luca, while Rian is his sister. He introduces them. Leo tells them that they have got their rank B promotion exam in the forest, so they came to the dark purple forest to take out more monsters. As the men with Erd continue to envy Kelvin, Erd tells them to cut it out. but they say he can't understand them because he's married and has kids. They start running off while crying and he follows them. Sarah, Clotho, and Gerald make it back to their party and they say they met Erd's party on the way. They ask if something happened and Rion tells them that they're hunting for monsters as they've got their rank B promotion exam in the forest today. Sarah and Gerald look at each other and they say that it's a problem. Kelvin asks them what they mean. Ethel uses her farsight skill and says there are no monsters in the forest. Sarah and Gerald say they have wiped out all the monsters. Kelvin meets Erd at his place to apologize on behalf of his team for wiping out all the monsters. Erd tells him not to apologize and says that Leo will understand when he explains. He adds that Kelvin's party seems to have grown strong, and they are worthy of a rank S exam. Kelvin and Rian are cleaning the dog, and Kelvin is worried about what Erd said about him being worthy of the rank S exam. Ethel tells him that he has always been promoted under special circumstances. She says that this will be his first exam, and he agrees with some sort of relief. Rion assures him that he won't have difficulties with the exam. As they wash the dog, Kelvin learns that Rion has named the dog Alex. Kelvin says Alex is now part of the family and tells Rion that she's partners with Alex and they must look after each other. Ethel and Kelvin are surprised to learn that Rion can understand Alex. She tells them that it's one of her skills. Gerald tells Rion that it's time for sword learning. Later that evening, Kelvin's mansion is surrounded by 14 men. Sarah, Kelvin, and Rion with Alex are awake and plan to fight them off while the rest are put to sleep, and Gerald is looking after Ellie and Luca. Kelvin asks Rion if she can deal with all the men who try to enter the gate as he will take the golems off from protecting them. Rion and Alex agree to go, and he gives her a sword and the farsight skill, and Clotho makes a mini Clotho for Rion. Rion and Alex go out fighting the men while Kelvin and Sarah are watching from a window. They observe her fighting skills and note where she must improve, and they appraise her teamwork skills with Alex. Kelvin and Sarah go out and compliment Alex and Rion. He tells Sarah to talk to Rion while he handles the rest who are hiding in the woods. Kelvin meets the man who is leading the other men, and the man recognizes him as the one who took out Kristoff and not the Duramus heroes. At Tryson Castle, Emperor Zel Tryson calls a meeting. Inside the meeting, they address issues related to other countries like Duramus, Trojan, and Guan, stating that they are not working in their favor. Tristan, a general of Tryson, is accused of failure, and he is told that he should take responsibility. Tristan stands his ground, claiming it wasn't his fault. During the meeting, he supports the idea of allowing war to happen between the three countries against theirs because their military is equipped, unlike the other nations. Princess Shitoro initially seemed to disagree, but later she smiles at the idea when her brother, Prince Azagrad, mentions he has a weapon for such a war. General Dan Dalba stands against the idea, but the Emperor insists they vote on it and requests the presence of another general who is absent. General Dalba's son goes to deliver the news to Clive that he's summoned by the Emperor to attend the meeting. He rises from his chair naked and asks him if he's pretty. Kelvin and his party are heading to an elven village because the guildmaster personally gave him an invitation letter to go to the elven village by the order of King Leonhard. Ethel says the place is giving her a feeling like she has been there before. Kelvin tells her that it should be her blood that's giving her that feeling because she's a half-elf after all. Kelvin reminisces about the guild's master's words, telling them that the attack from the men last night and the attack from the elven village all connect to Tryson's doing. So he needs to watch out because they might attack him again. While on the way, they notice an arrow coming at them and it hits the ground, giving them a warning to stop. They disembark from the carriage and see the elves with bows and arrows ready to shoot at them. Kelvin shows them the letter and tells them that he received the invitation letter from King Leonhard, introducing himself. An elderly elf named Nelorus introduces himself and welcomes them. He notices Elfil to be familiar with a girl he knew by the name Lumi. He addresses her as Lumil and asks her how she's still alive. Nelrus welcomes them into his house and apologizes to Kelvin for what happened earlier. Kelvin tells Nelrus that before they get to what King Leonhard has sent them for, they should talk about Ethel and how Nelrus mistook her for Lumil. Nelrus explains to them that he once knew an Elfil by the name of Lumil 20 years ago, when they lived in the western continent. He continues to say that one day they were attacked by the Fire Dragon King, who claimed that an elf had embarrassed him. If they handed her over to him, he would have spared the rest of them. After failing to give him what he asked for, the Fire Dragon King started to wipe out all the elves, and many lost their lives. Nelrus lost his leg in the process. He says that one elf stood up and told the Fire Dragon King to direct all his wrath on her and spare the rest of them. That elf was Lumil. He says that the Fire Dragon King said that she wasn't the one he was seeking, but if she accepted to be his bride, then he would spare the rest. Lumil agreed to the terms and he took her away. Gerald asked Nelrus why they fled the western continent when they had been freed from the Fire Dragon King. Nelrus explains that after a while Lumil was found dead nearby, and they were afraid that the Fire Dragon King might come for them too, so they fled to avoid casualties. They make a conclusion that Lumil must be Ethel's mother since Ethel was also found with the Fire Dragon King's curse. They comfort her assuming she's Lumil's child. Kelvin asks Nelris about the attacks from the new monster. After being told of their attacks, he suggests renovating the place and protecting it from those monsters. Gerald says he feels bad for their foes. The commander of Trison's army is leading an army combined with beasts heading to the Elven village. They talk amongst themselves that General Tristan is ready for his important stage. They say their beast army combined is so strong that even the Guans could not manage to infiltrate it. As they laugh their way, they get hit by an arrow one by one, neutralizing everyone it hits. The general tells his men to hide behind the beasts. They wonder who it could be because they are far from the Elven village. Kelvin is with Ethel on a watchtower he had built with an adamantine rampant. They continue taking down one by one, and Ethel is the one shooting with the bow that Kelvin had made for her. Gerald is told to guard the Elven village's gate as Kelvin had created some sort of fence around the whole village while the rest of the party goes on to attack Trison's beast army. Rion and Mel follow one soldier that went to report to the vice commander at their camp. The commander summons a gigantic beast from their side. Mel tells Rion to take care of it. Rion and Alex go after it and fight it. She strikes it with a sword Kelvin made for her, and it breaks. But she uses another skill and takes two swords from her mini Clotho, and Alex also grabs his sword through the mouth and takes down the monster with their attack. The vice commander is shocked to see a little girl taking down their giant beast, but he commands the beast to transform into its true form. The beast turns into a giant furnace beast with fire all over. Rion still goes after it with Alex, and they defeat it with one strike. The soldiers, seeing this, start retreating in fear. Kelvin and Ethel are impressed with Rion. They get attacked by a certain group of men. Kelvin blocks it and admits that the guy who attacked them is strong. Kelvin, the group's leader, identifies Clive as a Trison general. Clive attempts to charm Ethel after she shoots an arrow at him. Kelvin intervenes, warning Clive to stay away from Ethel, declaring her as his woman. Clive acknowledges that Kelvin's public declaration has angered him, admitting he has never seen someone assert ownership so openly. Kelvin discovers that Clive, like himself, was reincarnated. Words are exchanged, leading to an intense fight. During the battle, Clive manages to block Kelvin's attack, and the other members of Clive's party attack Kelvin from behind. Kelvin successfully fends them off, realizing that Clive had charmed all of them. Kelvin expresses anger, realizing that Clive is selfish and unconcerned about his own party members, even willing to shoot at them in the midst of their fight. The two exchange insults, with Kelvin calling Clive ugly and selfish, and Clive expressing his dislike for Kelvin. As the fight intensifies, Kelvin breaks Clive's defense magic barrier, the Helix Barrier. Kelvin's weapons break, and he entrusts them to Clotho for repairs. Seizing the opportunity, Clive unveils this powerful Tempest Barrier, a magic akin to a natural disaster, belonging to an S-ranked mage. Concern spreads among onlookers. Kelvin takes up his new weapon, the Black Staff Disaster, and swings it with full force, aware that it may damage part of the forest familiar to Ethel. Clive is defeated, losing his legs in the process. Kelvin attempts to finish Clive, but Tristan Faze intervenes, teleporting Clive away. Kelvin demands Clive's return, but Tristan refuses, admitting defeat and confessing to planning the attack on the Elven village. He introduces himself to Kelvin and acknowledges the power within the monster he is standing on. Tristan accepts the loss, stating they will meet again soon, and then disappears. Kelvin returns to the Elven village where he is greeted by everyone. Nelris instructs his people to prepare a banquet to celebrate their victory and express gratitude to Kelvin and his party. Rion, Mel, and Sarah engage in a race to reach Kelvin first and receive his appraisal. Rion emerges victorious in the race, prompting Sarah to express her understanding of losing to Mel, but not Rion. Mel encourages Sarah to be happy for Rion's growth, and Sarah, in agreement, expresses her happiness to Rion. While the celebration unfolds in honor of their triumph over Trison's army, Kelvin isolates himself and sits under a tree. Ethel discovers him and inquires about his thoughts. Kelvin shares that he's contemplating how blessed he feels since arriving in this world. Ethel presents him with a hairpin given by Nelris, which once belonged to her mother. Kelvin assists her in putting it on, and she expresses her desire to serve him forever, to which he agrees. The rest of the party joins them, and as they engage in conversation, a young elven girl approaches Kelvin, thanking him for saving them. She introduces herself as King Leonhardt, surprising Kelvin and his party. She reveals an item that allows her to transform into any form and congratulates them for passing the exam, declaring Kelvin's new rank as S. She adds that he should prepare for mock battles with other rank S individuals. This excites Kelvin and the rest of the team, expressing eagerness to face their rank S adversaries. With that, This recap has come to an end, and you're a pretty interesting guy for sticking around. Don't forget to hit the bell icon as well as the subscribe button for more recaps like this. See you thirsty weebs later.